Good morning, good day, good evening, good night. Wherever and whenever you're listening to this, welcome to the Bitaxe Townhall. Today we're writing the Townhall number 56, 57. I don't know. I'm One Clue, your host, and I'm happy to be here with you today. Today with us on stage is Scott again. Last time we missed you here. It was a little bit of a monologue, but I'm happy to have you here with me again.
Good to be here, man. Sorry I missed you guys last time. I was traveling, but back in the lab now and stoked to be here.
It's
Thank
always
you for
stoking to
getting the
talk about open source stuff.
I know you're fanatically getting all the pieces together and getting the legendary OSMU Town Hall put together. So appreciate that.
I try my best here, but to get everybody here on board, I do see a couple new people in here. It's lovely to have you here in the audience. I want to make sure that you are not weirded or confused by today's microphone quality. I'll sort that out another day. But one of the important things about the Bitaxe Town Hall that we do have is that this here is for you. So if you're coming in here and you feel like you have a question or you're just checking it out, you don't really understanding like what the freaking heck is going on. What is even a Bitaxe? I just went into this weird internet room and now I'm listening to some weirdos working on some weird stuff. Well, this is your place to shine because this town hall here is basically just like a stage, and you have a chat functionality that you can use to ask questions. Every question that you have is welcome. And if you want to come up on stage, you can raise your hand and we'll make sure to bring you up on stage. Just be aware these town halls are recorded and later on uploaded. So basically, it's a question and answer thing here, bi-weekly. But usually we talk about news because most of the audience is somewhat more often in here.
We also have the chat. We got the Discord chat going on the side here. So if you ask something in there, we can read it for the recording. But I don't. Yes, the chat doesn't get recorded, right?
No, the chat has been recorded later on, but that was when I was still using Windows. But I switched over. That was a German joke, I'm sorry. Because the word doof means stupid in German, so we call it Windows. Windows stupid, something like that. Anyway, yeah, German jokes are somewhat lazy if you need to explain them, especially not funny. But yeah, German humor is great. Definitely.
Well, what was the astronauts that are going and circling around the moon have been having some Microsoft problems, right? Did you hear about that?
Maybe some Microsoft updates, huh? In outer space.
Yeah, they like radioed back like, oh, the toilet's not working and our Outlook email isn't working. It's like, what? You were like in space and you're trying to use Outlook? Apparently they fixed the toilet, but they're still working on Outlook.
Yeah, well, I probably have been... I was the greatest dad of all time. A week ago, I was so freaking lazy. It was a long day. I was hours on the road. And I was like, well, if I do head back home, I don't want to get in the kitchen and cook anything. I'm sorry, son, but we drive over to McDonald's. So we did. And the first thing that I was welcomed with was the blue screen of death. I was like, oh, freaking heck. Like, what's going on in this world? Just switch over to Linux, you dumbass.
That's right. Microsoft screwing up everything from space missions to McDonald's ordering.
It's so crazy. Fix the toilet, fix Microsoft Windows, yeah. BIOS is new, yeah. Like this entire operating system thing, that's some new world stuff here, I'll tell you. But anyway, let's get aside from all of these jokes. We definitely want to talk about a couple of things. And before we hit recording, I was a little bit trying to get into the conversation of what's currently going on. When it comes to news things, obviously we want to talk about the ESP miner, what's going on with that. We also want to hit on a couple of other topics. Probably it's more or less what we do think about talking is worth it, and what you guys have in sorts of questions. So that is always dictating the flow of these town halls, just to prepare everybody who's in here. Most of you will probably know. I was about to talk a little bit about a feature that I'm trying to implement, but so far I'm failing from completing it, which is Wi-Fi roaming. Some of you might now be wondering, like, why the freaking heck do we even need that? Let me start a little bit earlier. What is Wi-Fi roaming? Well, if you walk around with your Bitaxe, what you usually do because you do have it in your pocket, then it might be the case that you have multiple access points, like multiple routers or something, whatever you want to call them. And they all do emit the same Wi-Fi network name, and they all do emit the same password for this network. So in order to stay in a good range, you have a feature with your smartphone that is hopping from one access point to another one if the signal quality of the second access point is better. This is so-called Wi-Fi roaming. Or if you use your phone in another foreign country, you enable the roaming feature to have internet access. Basically, that is the same on Wi-Fi. And for 2 or 3 weeks now, I'm working on implementing that on the ESP miner firmware as well. So far, I'm failing, not because of like the code entirely is not working. It is sort of working, but it's not reliable, and that is holding me back currently. So,
what's the strategy there? Does it continually scan to see if
so the strategy that I do have is whenever a Wi-Fi signal is dropping below negative 70 dBm, I'm doing a scan, and if I figure out another SSID with a different BSSID, which is the unique name of the access point. Every access point does have a BSSID, which is unique to this access point. Then I'm trying to hop over to that if the signal quality is at least 7 to 10 dBm better. But this only happens if your dBm is below 70. So only if you have a weak signal. And then it will trigger every 20 seconds.
When you first turn on your Bitaxe, like it's already configured, it already knows your SSID.
Yeah.
Does it join the best one automatically?
No. So the way how we currently do run ESP Miner is a little bit tricky. We utilize the Wi-Fi header files and the Wi-Fi implementation for ESP Miner, which does utilize the NVS in a certain way. So the ESP stores the BSSID, the unique identifier of your last connected AP, in its NVS, and it will always try to reconnect to it, even though there's another SSID next to you with the same name, same password, but it has a better quality. It's not connecting to it, it's connecting to the weaker one, because that is how we currently have set up the ESP miner. I'm trying to fixing that with this Wi-Fi roaming as well, so that it does try to quickly figure out, hey, there's a better SSID around. But yeah, it's sometimes working, it's not always working, and at the moment I don't know why. So I'm trying to figure that out, but I have other priorities that are a little bit higher, and we also want to push 2.14 probably in the next 6 weeks or so. So we're working on things that are really needed, and the Wi-Fi roaming, that's a goodie. That's just because I'm curious.
Yeah, that is interesting. That is interesting. You can imagine a situation where you first set up your Bitaxe, connect to a network, and then you're, for whatever reason, the best signal, if you have like a bunch of access points in your house, like the best signal wasn't available at that very moment, it won't automatically switch to a better one, if I understand.
Yeah, think about it. You have your router set up in your kitchen, just as an example. But out of curiosity, you unboxed your Bitaxe for the very first time in your office, which is like in the second floor. And the Wi-Fi signal over there is not really that great. So you did a scan and you do have a repeater in your office, and you connect to that repeater because the SSID is there, yada, yada, yada. After a while, you figure out, well, the connection is not really that great. I just move it over to the kitchen. Yeah, guess what? What the Bitaxe will do, it will try to reconnect to your repeater in your office, because that is the BSSID, the unique identifier of the access point that it does have stored in the NVS, and it's always trying to reconnect to it. So technically what you would need to do is, if you move your Bitaxe to a different location and you have multiple access points or you have repeaters, etc., you need to do a scan for Wi-Fi networks again and pick your network again. It's kind of weird because the current scan functionality that I wrote, it does not show you multiple BSSIDs. Maybe I should implement that, I think that would be out of scope of making it granny proof. It's a really odd situation on how to solve this, but still be in the position of keep it nice and easy and understandable for the user.
Yeah, I mean,
Blockdio was asking in the chat if this.
Than done.
Yeah, 1 second. Blockdio was asking in the chat.
The best one, right? With that SSID. Like,
can you repeat that, please?
I was saying it's easier said than done, but like you can imagine, the SSID is like, my house, and every time you join my house, you want to join the BSSID that has the best signal strength.
So that's if we go deep into that rabbit hole, this entire thing of SSIDs, which is just emitting a name for your network, that is the entire reason why something like a man-in-the-middle attack is even possible. If we would use BSSIDs, which is just stupid because it's a unique identifier and it's barely readable, then we wouldn't have had that issue because you would need to clone it. Sure, if you're technical enough, that's possible. But the BSSID is actually you can think about the address of your access point, and the SSID is just the name of your network. So yeah, it is easier said than done, as you said, and it's not really easy to solve that. And I do see Blockdio also asking in the chat if this is the same for mesh networks. Yes, it's the same. Mesh network in itself, the only advancement they do have here is they do try to communicate everybody with everybody in this network, but it does not solve the issue of having multiple access points around in your house. Like maybe you have one access point in your attic, you have one in your basement, you have one in your kitchen, and maybe one in your garage because you do crazy things over there. So for every of these access points, you have unique BSSIDs, but all of them show you the network name, my network 123. So it doesn't matter where you're standing in your current house, you will still only see this one network, but you don't know which BSSID you're using unless you connect to it and you go into the advanced information in your network tab. Yeah, I do see Brucey is writing in the chat, the goal is to make it possible to store several BSSIDs for the same SSID. I don't think that is necessarily the goal that I do have. The goal basically is to occasionally do a scan if your Wi-Fi network connection is shit. Below negative 70 dBm is shit. It's like really bad. You still have a connection, but it's not good. It's plenty for a Bitaxe. It's really plenty. It's not that bad. But in terms of signal strength, it's bad. And for that, I was thinking about changing that.
I feel like the protection you have from man-in-the-middle attacks is that, some other person, right, they could set up a Wi-Fi access point in front of your house with the same SSID name, but what they won't have is the password. So if your client refuses to join my house 123, if it doesn't have the password, then I think you're safe.
No, you're not. So, okay, let's dive a little bit into that. What you do as a man-in-the-middle attacker, and hopefully this is not going to become a hacking session here, is you just not scam, you skim the network name of the network you're trying to infiltrate. You set up authentication, but the tricky part is you want to receive information from clients that are already connected to the network you're trying to infiltrate. What you do is you increase the radio emit signal strength that you do have. So basically you're trying to wash away the network the client is usually using by just overlapping it with your Wi-Fi signal. And your authentication is set up in such a way that you accept any sort of password or authentication at all, because you expect that this authentication is working for the original network. You do that until you have hit a client who actually does have the correct credentials. You just save them, you put off your network, and you connect to the network you're trying to infiltrate. And that's how easy it is to do.
I thought, and again, I don't know exactly how this works, but I thought that the password exchange is a little bit more sophisticated like that. It's not like the client just says like, oh, here's my password 123, and it's like, okay, cool, now I know your password, right? It's like a public key exchange.
Yes, that's correct.
So even if I, connect to your man-in-the-middle network outside my house that's called My House 123, and I send my password, you're not going to be able to actually see the password because we've done a public key exchange.
Yeah, the tricky part here is to reroute these packages over to the original network.
Well, they can't authenticate on the original network.
If the client is already authenticated, you can just forward that.
But when my client connects to my network, it's an encrypted connection, right? So they can't see what I'm exchanging with them.
True.
And because they don't know the password for my Wi-Fi, they can't get on it and see the data. Well, and I think this was the case maybe way back in the day for like original Wi-Fi, but I think that the modern authentication schemes are a little bit more foolproof than that.
It definitely is. And it was just a sort of representation of how this could potentially happen, but it's out of scope of what we're trying to actually discuss here anyway. I mean, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Skimming these information off is hard. We can leave it like that. And it's not just plugging in a couple of things and pressing a couple of buttons. Yeah, it's a little bit more than that. But the basic understanding of that kind of works in that particular way. But,
well, cool. Yeah. This seems like a good feature to have. Do you have like a GitHub issue that you're using to work on this?
It's already a pull request, but I'm not merging it,
cool.
And I think I will change it to a draft because it's not working in the intended way that I wanted to.
Well, I think this would be a great feature to have.
Currently, so what it's doing is like initially when you boot up your Bitaxe, it does understand, hey, I'm on this. So I did a test. I have a network in my office and I do have another access point in my garage because I do crazy things in my garage. And I positioned my Bitaxe exactly at a position where the SSID for my garage is at -20, so a really strong network, and my office SSID is only -75, so really weak. And initially, right after boot, it was working with, hey, my network is kind of shit, I should check out if there are other networks with the same SSID and try to authenticate to them. It did work, it switched over to my garage network, but for whatever reason, after a couple of seconds, it was failing. It had an IP address, but then it was failing with using that IP address again. And it was rebooting and connecting to the old BSSID. So
that's that fun project of like looking at those Wi-Fi like error codes. I forget exactly what they call them. I remember we were doing this before, and there's like a zillion different codes, and it's very unclear what they mean, and you're like, okay, great. I got this code. And of course, as it gets propagated through the ESP IDF Wi-Fi stack, it gets even more complicated. But Definitely, I feel your pain. It is working with these low power headless devices makes this even more difficult.
Yeah, and Kryptonite is asking in the chat that the goal here is to maximize the signal strength in a multi-wireless access point environment. And yes, the answer is yes. The goal is just to make sure that no matter if you move your Bitaxe or if you move like your Bitaxe from position A to position B, it always makes sure to connect to the strongest network access point available. That is the goal that I'm trying to achieve. But it's on a low priority, because if you move your Bitaxe and you notice, well, my signal is kind of shit, you maybe do a rescan in the Wi-Fi network page anyway. It's a workaround, it's not a fix. So as soon as I'm done with other more important things, like making the dashboard a little bit more user-friendly, which is currently on the highest priority for me, then I'm looking again into the Wi-Fi roaming feature. But speaking about that, we should probably switch over to that topic. So Mutachim and I, we had a little bit of a deep conversation about how could we make ESP Miner, XOS, however you want to call the front end, a little bit more user-friendly. Because yes, as developing this thing, I do understand everything that I do see on the front end, and all of the other developers who are doing the same also do that. Like, show them that they do understand that. But I'm sort of always stepping back and talking to Mutachim and trying to do that with Hexfox, because we haven't talked about that. Hexfox is now a maintainer in the ESP Miner repository as well, so maybe we should do a little congratulations here in this town hall for him or her.
Yes, right on, Hexfox. This is huge, man.
It's really lovely to have you on the team, and I'm really thankful to have you.
Likewise, appreciate all your contributions, and yeah, this little project has grown quite big and, as I'm sure you know, quite complicated. So definitely appreciate your help.
So to get back to topic, what I'm trying to do is sometimes step back and think about how would a completely newbie look at that? What do they actually want to see? And it's kind of a hard conversation to have, especially between devs, because like we think, no, that is like obvious. I do understand that this information is displaying me that. But I think a really needed feature is to come into a situation and think about it. What would be the stupidest user to be expected to understand off of that? So I'm not trying to be mean, but maybe uninformed user is a better way to approach that. What would the most uninformed user receive out of the information that he's seeing in the dashboard? And my conclusion is we have overloaded XOS. So we have started a couple of things to make sure that XOS is a little bit more user-friendly without stripping away any of these informations. And that's the tricky part. So the first thing that is minor is grid stack. It's a front-end change that will allow you to rearrange your dashboard in the way how you like. So with the next release, you can move your hash rate graph, you can move your temperature, whatever. You can adjust the sizing of that. It's just a JavaScript package that allows us to do that. But we will do a little bit of an approach that PMax did with his ESP Miner for the NerdX series, where you can see certain features depending on if you press the button or not. He does have that, for example, for changing the frequency on your settings. For the Bitaxe, you need to type in the $OC in order to come into the menu and use manual things for your frequency and voltage. For the NerdX series, you need to press a button. It allows you that. So what we will do for certain pages, such as the pool page or the settings page, there are some things that are not needed for everybody. So they will be hidden as the default. Unless you press this button, then they will be visible again. With that, we are trying to move into the way of making XOS a little bit more user-friendly again. and don't display too much. Because if I try to think of someone who does not understand Bitaxe or have never heard about that and is just trying to set it up for the very first time, giving them just the right amount of needed information in order to get started, like put in your Wi-Fi, put in your Bitcoin address. Don't even think about changing the pool or setting up a, I don't know, like different script SIGs or any TLS or anything else. Just like basic stuff. I think that's more user-friendly instead of giving them everything. Like, do you want to enable extra nonces, etc.? That is not helpful. That is more or less probably overloading them. And I do see Matt is already... Yeah, Matt is already writing in the chat that what about the info icons with the hover description for some of these things? So these so-called P tooltips or tooltip icons. They are good for certain things, and we do use them on a couple of things already. But for hiding features or information to make it a little bit more user-friendly, I think that would be the wrong approach.
I think that having by default a very simple UI with the option to sort of enable more complicated features is a good idea, right? We have to remember, we're in kind of an echo chamber here on OSMU because the people that come here are, for the most part, more technically inclined, more sophisticated, right? We've got 100,000 people, right, using Bitaxe that just are not that far along in their mining understanding yet, right? We can see all the people that don't even change the mining pool, right, at all, right? We can see them pointing to public pools. So there's a lot of people who, they're not ready to dig into all that yet. So if they have a very simple UI, you can just get it going. You can just get your lottery ticket up and running.
It's even worse than that, to be honest. There's a huge amount of people who don't even change the default address. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. McPipe did an analysis of that recently. You can see there's quite a bit of people that haven't changed it, which, maybe some of them just want to donate, but I think a lot of them probably just don't want to be bothered with setting it up. So to the extent that we could make a simple UI that is the default, that gets you going, and then, if you're like probably all of us here who want to like dig into more details, right? If that's still there. You just, can click around a little bit more to enable it. I think that's the right way to go.
Yeah, and that is what we're trying to do. That's also the reason, that is one of the reasons why we're taking so long for 2.14. Because yes, it's nice. We have a ton of bug fixes. We have a ton of other things that we shipped with the last releases. But if we try to change into that particular way that we make it more user-friendly, it should be a one go and not like we need multiple steps. So unless everything all around this topic and all of the other topics that we do have that we think need to go into 2.14 are done, 2.14 is not shipping. And that's why I do estimate like maybe 6 weeks. And also we have a private life, so I'm currently not at home. It is hearable. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's heading in the right direction. That seems like a worthy way to go. We don't hear feedback as much from the people who are overwhelmed and don't know how to figure it out. Right? We just hear feedback from people who are, deep in the weeds already.
That's also kind of an issue. Like I'm trying my best of understanding the issues that people are having, and currently my best source of information is Reddit, with the subreddit Bitaxe that we do have over there. It is somewhat sometimes convoluted with shit information around everything else. Some of them I do let pass, some of them I need to delete because it's so much off topic. But sometimes we get some good information out of there, what kind of issues people do have. And Kristaps, I do see your message in the chat. Yes, please, please. So I talked about this 2 or 3 town halls ago. I'm currently working on a data set for LLMs in order to train them on real issues that is happening with on all around Bitaxe users. I mean, the reason why I'm doing that is too long to explain, but yeah, I'm playing around with all sorts of things too much, and with my main work, I'm heavily, deeply into LLM, sadly, but it's kind of fun. And currently, I do have a data set of like 200,000 questions all around Bitaxe and answering them, but it needs to be more. And I'm really happy for any sort of information from actual resellers and manufacturers that do have some support tickets.
Well, huge props to you for going down that Reddit rabbit hole. I see that Distortions also mentioned Facebook. Oh my gosh, that is just a swamp of all kinds of things. I'm sure there's some nuggets of wisdom in there, though. So if someone wants to volunteer to pay attention to that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, Facebook is kind of an odd thing. Like, I just recently created a Facebook account for my company, but I personally, I probably deleted my Facebook account 10 years ago, like my personal one. Some people still use it. I don't get it. I don't like it, especially all of these mobile phone versions of apps for these social networks. I don't like them at all. There's mainly for security reasons.
There's too many to continually pay attention to. I wish we could just get the few people on Facebook and some of the people from Reddit who are legitimately trying to use this and bring them over to OSMU so that we could more easily interface with them. But I don't know. There's a lot of Bitaxe and NerdQX users these days, so that could be tough.
Yeah, one thing that I do see in the chat from Benza is not really a question, but a suggestion. Benza was writing, a feature that some of my customers have requested is having some default solar pool set up on startup, which you can pick from a drop-down menu. Actually, I do have a personal opinion about that. I kind of love and I kind of hate it at the same time. And the reason for that is, yes, that's technically possible. It's super easy to do, and it's super handy. But with all of the things going around in this open source scene and the ecosystem, it's kind of hard. Like, who do we gonna pick? And what if we out of a sudden pick a pool that becomes malicious? Like, are people gonna blame us? That's not a question. That is actually a saying, because people will. Like, if we do that, we are so deep into the shit that people will just throw rocks at us. And that's the reason why we can't do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can already see the drama. Why aren't you adding my pool? Why aren't you adding my pool? It's from the Bitaxe legit list drama. I can already tell you that there's going to be a lot of drama surrounding which pools are on that list and which ones aren't. Also, who are we to say which pools beginners should use? Like, I realize that we come default with public pool, but just the process of creating a list of pools, I think is centralizing, and we don't want to be in a position of being moderators of that list.
We are already moderators of so many things that we don't want to be. It's hard to opt out of these things. Yes. One quick example for that is, like, I do host the subreddit for Bitaxe. We have a couple of moderators there as well, besides me. But it's 95% of the time when I delete posts, I get people swearing at me and being not so nice because they don't understand that we are only focused on Bitaxe and Bitcoin in that subreddit and not about shitcoins and all of the other projects.
Yeah. Yeah, that is like a recipe for disaster. I don't think we want to take on any more of that. Um, you know, the cool thing is that it's an open source
Kryptonite,
project.
you need to explain that. I don't get it.
OSVMU.
Open source Bitcoin miners United. Yeah. Well, I think OSMU is already established. We can change it.
Yeah, I mean, this comes up a lot on OSMU, right? Is people want to talk about shitcoins, which is not explicitly prohibited, but I think on OSMU, if you want to hype some, shitcoin, you better be prepared to defend yourself, which I don't know, man. I don't think there's any projects out there besides Bitcoin that can really be defended.
Well, the biggest issue that is around there in this entire space, it doesn't matter. You create something, and it doesn't even need to be in the Bitcoin space. Maybe it's open source, maybe it's not, but be prepared. People will always have an opinion.
That's for sure. I mean, the one of the few rules that we do have is that it's the Open Source Miners United. So, that is an instant delete, denial, kick, ban, whatever, if you want to hype closed source projects. But, I think we're somewhat tolerant of shitcoins, but I don't know. Don't be hyping that bullshit. Like, especially the just weird, scammy ones, which, I don't know, seems like it's all of them.
Yeah. I mean, Benzo is currently explaining a little bit more that the entire discussion about having pools as a drop-down menu and some sort of pre-selection, it's kind of fair conversation, and he is reporting in the chat that we can only have discussions about things that are reported from the customers. But I think even though customers are reporting something, who am I to say who is wrong or right? But I think there's a catch to that. We had so many people using pools who are directly scamming people, and yet these people are fighting for these pools, which I don't get. McPiper was doing a really good analysis about some pools who are actually scamming people, like telling them, hey, you mine BTC, but as soon as you connect to it, you're not even mining BTC, you are mining some shitcoin, and you've never been mentioned on any payout address. So basically, you never know if you will be paid or not. And yet people are coming out there and telling, yeah, no, it's working. Just use my coupon code. What the fuck are you talking about? It is working. It's legit. Fuck you. Like, as I said, people will have an opinion. People will try to do things that they think is okay. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying how it is.
Yeah. And one of the things that we're just not going to do is sacrifice freedom for, convenience or security, right? Like, obviously it would be a lot easier to use a Bitaxe if it just became, pre-configured and an account on some pool and it was just all set up and ready to run. Like, there's tons of other miners that do that, but that's not what this project is about, right? We would very much like to help educate you on how to select the correct pool. As an example, Solo Satoshi's put together a fantastic series of guides. You, WantClue, have done a bunch of guides too on how to navigate this. Power Mining has also done a bunch of guides on how to do this, right? The right way to approach this is to help educate people on how to make the correct decision, and give them the freedom to do whatever it is they want. the wrong way to go about it is to just close it down and make it so that you can't make the wrong decision, because you are dictating what people can and can't do, and that's just not what we're about here.
Well, I think it kind of depends, and it is definitely a really, really narrow edge on a sword that you're walking around, if that is even a saying. Because if I think about my Bitforge Nano, I mean, if you look at the Bitforge Nano as like an uninformed customer or user, you only have the option to set like 3 different power modes. But as soon as you dig into it, you understand, hey, you can use the same mechanism as on your Bitaxe. You can add the $OC, and now you can overclock it to your liking. But yeah, I'm kind of dictating in that way how people can use the Bitforge Nano, but on the other hand, I still give them the freedom to use them however they want to. So yeah, it's definitely a hard thing to do. I mean, I have my reasons for doing it that way, but yeah, I also do see why you should not dictate certain things, and that's the reason why you can then still overclock it, or why you can change things in another way. That's the entire thing builds upon that. That is the reason why ESP Miner is open source, and why we're not closed sourcing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that approach they use for the Bitforge Nano is perfectly fine, right? There's nothing wrong with having an easy, simple user interface to get started, but then having the tools there under the hood and no restrictions on how you want to do it, right? I mean, if you want to, disable the over temperature shutdown and disable the fans and overclock it and burn the thing up, it's the same thing. Like, you have the freedom to just drive your car into a wall if you want. I would advise against it, but you do have the freedom. So, yeah, like, this isn't like a ride at Disneyland where you can't get hurt, right? This is a real miner, and we give you, the power to do what it is you want, including things that could damage your miner. So, there's a lot of power in fuck around and find out.
Oh yeah, there definitely is. And I believe with all of the upcoming things in the future, it will be even better for buffering around. I mean, one of the tricky things is, for example, for manufacturers and resellers, is how to actually work around with customers. And in order to fix that, I was implementing the log that you can capture and download the logs using the web flasher. Like, if you use the Bitaxe web flasher currently and you as a customer, you have issues, you just hook it up via USB to your PC and you click on capture logs, and after a while you just say, okay, save my logs. You can download this TXT file and send it over to your reseller and tell them, hey, I have this issue, here's the logs, can you do anything with that? So far, I haven't seen a single reseller really reaching out to us devs with like, hey, I have this kind of weird log. Sometimes it happens on Discord, but it's not that often. So yeah, this feature is probably not really that much used. So with the next version, we will bring in downloading logs to ESP Miner natively, so that people can, in XOS, as long as XOS is hopefully working, can just download the logs there and send that over to their reseller, customer service, or whatever. Mutatum is currently also working on a way to implement it that we can preserve certain things of the startup sequence as well in the logs. It's kind of a little bit sophisticated, but he's on a really good track. And there are tons of other good things coming up for 2.14 as well. Another thing is like a WebSocket API. So with 2.14, your API will not be only refreshed every 5 seconds. So you start up your Bitaxe, you wait 5 seconds, and then you have new stats. No, it will be instantaneous. If a tiny bit on your Bitaxe changes, you see it immediately. It will happen with 2.14 because we're switching over to WebSockets. And it's going to have a couple of caveats with it, but he did a really great job with that. The PR for that is more or less approved. I mean, I approved it, but we still need to do a couple of testings on that. It's just going to be awesome for the next release.
That's badass. That is badass. Like it is kind of a weird paradigm to be just constantly polling the API for data, right? To have an actual connection where you can just low latency send the data back and forth. That's amazing.
Well, we weren't really polling the API all of that time. It was more or less the connection state that was not really in a good position, and because we never really used WebSockets in a way they were intended to be used, we had this bad behavior of, well, your web interface only refreshes every 5 seconds. But with WebSockets, it's like a stream. It is basically a stream. So as soon as something changes, your fan speed changes like 1 RPM, your ASIC frequency changes 2 megahertz, you will see that. So a nice catch to that is also if you boot up your Bitaxe with the new WebSocket API, you can see the frequency of your ASIC chip rising.
Ooh, that's cool.
Oh,
that's really cool.
He did a really fantastic job on that.
Oh, that's really cool. I want to try it. I like that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's the PR1623. You can just try that.
That's neat. I mean, I think obviously a lot of people don't care, but I think there are some people who do care and be interested to know that we don't just, start at the hash frequency that you plug in, right? It has to be ramped up to that in order for the chip to be stable. And I think, even if it's just subtly shown, exposing that to people would be a neat way to, kind of reveal the way that the sausage is made.
And even then, yes, you need to ramp up to a certain specific frequency for your ASIC chip, but even then, there's no guarantee that that's going to be stable. And for that, we also have more or less another fix with displaying the actual frequency that the ASIC chip is using. Because the catch, and that's a little bit technical here, is the Bitaxe does utilize a certain mechanism to change the frequency on the ASIC chip. And we do calculate that by something called PLL, which basically just tries to find the most appropriate frequency voltage combination for the chip in order to work with the TPS. So the TPS cannot give certain things on certain frequencies. So we need to play around with that. But these informations aside, with 2.14, the actual frequency that's been used by the ASIC chip will be reported in the web UI, no longer the thing that you set up in your settings. Probably this will confuse the people, but again, for that, we are also trying to figure out how we can appropriately display that to the user, because in the future, they set their ASIC frequency to 400, but they actually see 403.75 as the frequency. Maybe they're freaking out, maybe not, I don't know, but this is the actual frequency that your chip is using, and you should see this information. Because maybe your ASIC chip is not working at this particular frequency, so if you play around with your settings and you maybe decrease or increase your ASIC frequency to something else, and now it's hopping over from 402.75 to 405 megahertz because you just hit the sweet spot, well, then you do understand what was the actual problem with your chip. It was this floating point that was causing issues or something else. So, yeah. Also,
yeah, I mean, I think that for people that are trying to dial in the best efficiency or the highest hash rate or whatever, like knowing the actual frequency that gets used will be helpful, right? You can imagine if you're trying to just do like a binary search for the best efficiency and you're changing the frequency, it will be helpful to know what you actually get, right? Because not the way the chip is designed, not every frequency is available. So you can type any number that you want into that field, but that specific number might not actually be available on the chip.
Yeah, I'm seeing like Sean and a couple of other people are running in the chat. Maybe we should call it target / actual. Yeah, maybe. I mean, if you look at all of these proprietary systems that are out there, you do see that all of them are using some sort of an auto-tuning functionality. And it's a little bit unfortunate, and I'm a little bit sad. We had one developer designing a auto-tune feature for Bitaxe, but he closed his PRs because he said, well, seems like it just takes us too long to review it, so he no longer has any interest in having that PR open. Well, it is what it is. But I do think for the future, with bigger Bitaxes that are coming, like no longer only single chip, but also more multi-chip units that will become in the future, it is definitely a needed thing. Also, if you think about like, yes, we had the hex, which was a nice thing. We have the super hex. There are some works for a gamma hex going on, but there are other things that are also been worked on. So having a tune feature is not unnecessary, it is necessary, and for that hopefully we can revive that PR. But displaying that, to come back to the point, is sometimes a little bit tricky, because even these proprietary systems, they only show you the frequency that you set for. They don't show you the actual frequency. Apart from LuxOS, if I'm not mistaken, they do show you the actual frequency that the AC chip is using. Everybody else is just...
It's been a while since I used LuxOS, but I seem to remember them. They actually just have a drop down of voltage and frequency combinations.
Yeah.
I don't think you can actually type in an arbitrary frequency.
No, you can't. You can't do that. But even with a drop down thing, I think even if you set your AC chip to 425 megahertz and I don't know 11.96 volts for the PSU, I think they are not always hitting the 425 megahertz on the AC chip.
Oh, very possible. Also, I've done a lot of work recently on the communication protocol with the APW12 PSUs, and those also, just because you tell them a voltage that you want, that isn't necessarily what you get. It's almost the same issue as the frequency setting. So
yeah,
there's that to contend with on the Antminers.
It's kind of a tricky thing, and it takes a lot of people in different sorts of expertise that you need to make a miner that is bulletproof. Yes, we proved it with the Bitaxe that it's more or less easy to handcraft it in a rush, and we refined it to a beautiful product that it nowadays is. But if you think about it, as you said, like you need people in power supply understanding, you need people in C, you need people in other programming languages, you need UI experts, you need UX experts, you need people that do understand how to read data sheets properly in order to understand what kind of components we do need. And combining all of that together is tough.
Is the WebSocket API going to be available outside of AxOS, like generally available?
In the end, it's a JSON, so yeah. If you open up a GET request and it's not a WebSocket, yeah, okay, cool. You just receive your JSON, but technically, unless we do restrict it, I'm not certainly sure if we do restrict it currently with the PR that's open. But if you don't restrict it, yeah, you can just open up a WebSocket.
So this is kind of cool. I've long had the opinion that auto-tuning is best left to external tools and should not be built into AxOS. And I think that having the actual frequency, like the target frequency and the set frequency available in the API, and having that API be essentially live streaming over WebSockets will make external auto-tuning tools much easier to implement and much more successful and probably much faster. I still kind of think that auto tuning should be a separate tool from XOS.
Well, we will see. In the end of the day, Mutatron did a really great thing, because I had really long conversations with him about what are we currently utilizing, and sometimes we had issues of memory leakages and other things. But when it comes to like CPU utilization of this ESP, we are barely scratching the 6% mark.
Yeah, I think that, while we clearly we have some more CPU power available in ESP Miner, I just think, all the existing firmwares that do auto tuning, it's a part of their firmware, right? Because they charge for that. That's their proprietary secret sauce, right? We're not interested in that here, right? And I think that having a very nicely done, very performant, desktop tool for auto tuning your Bitaxe, it could just be so much more powerful and so useful. And if there's different tools, it could be useful for different use cases. And maybe there's even one that you can use to characterize your specific Bitaxe. Maybe this is at the factory, right? Maybe they run it at the factory because we know all the chips are different. And so they figure out, all right, here's the best settings for this chip. And that could be baked in, and that could be shown in the UI. But then, exposing this to the end user to use external tools to do it, I think is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just a question of how things should be done. And let me quickly take a look into the chat, because I was losing track here a little bit.
Hexfox says the problem with external tools is few people are running 24/7 PCs. I think that, in the case of auto tuning, this isn't something you would need to run 24/7, right? This is like, you're like, all right, I want to come up with a couple presets maybe for my specific machine with this chip on it, and this cooling and this fan and this power supply. So you could auto tune it, and it outputs like, okay, cool. Here's your here's your presets, right? This is if you even care, right? We just had this discussion about new users who they don't care, right? Like, they're not going to want to do this. They're not going to want to have the UI cluttered with sort of pro tools like that. This is for someone who's like, all right, I'm really interested in getting a little bit more hash rate or a little bit more efficiency out of this thing, right? So they could run these tools.
Mm.
And I don't think you have to run them 24/7 is my point.
No, but as the people are pointing out, it's hard for people to use external tools, and as MacPapa is pointing out, even running a Python script is too much for most of them. Yeah, and that's what we're trying to need to make sure that maybe someday something like that will come as a feature for ESP Miner. Currently, it's not really planned. Auto tuning might be a nice thing for bigger machines for the future. I don't know, maybe in the next 2 years. But for now, with the variety of miners that we do have all around in the Bitaxe and the NodeX ecosystem, I think we are really set in a good position. And from my understanding, at least with the manufacturers that I kind of do work together with, most of them, they try their best in having a good setup of what kind of frequencies they do use in order to ship out their machines. But sure, there are also a ton of manufacturers who just ship it out with the default frequencies. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work that well with that particular chip. Could be. So, yeah, I think before we go into the step of giving that feature to all of the users, a way better approach in order to eliminate this issue in the first place would be to have such a tool so that manufacturers can run this tuning process before they even ship it out to the customers.
Imagine we have an OSMU released external tool, right? And this could be, an app right? Maybe it's Electron or whatever, right? So it runs on Mac, Linux, PC, and it's, you know, a nicely done app, and it could do auto tuning. It could do all sorts of additional analysis stuff, right? This is something that like people who really want to dig into this and really want to tune it and hack on it could get and run. It's not complicated to run. Of course, it's open source, so people can contribute to that. Like this chart that, you know, Crypto Night is showing, right? Like that's like, I love to see that kind of stuff, right? My grandma, not so much. So this could be, you know, the sort of pro app, if you will. And, you know, that, I think that'd be a really cool project for, you know, a group at OSMU to do, to make this, you know, kind of the reference design maybe for a really nice Bitaxe tool, external tool, to show all these neat things you can do. Because, you know, we're talking about all these features, right? That we're learning about the chips and the registers that they have, and it's really interesting data. But it's not useful to it's not useful to grandma. It's not used to mom and dad. But there are people who would want to do it. And also just say that Luxor released their LuxOS Commander app that they use to put extra stuff. It's got all kinds of random stuff in it. But, you know, it, just because it's an external tool doesn't mean it has to be necessarily a complicated app to run.
No, not necessarily. But we'll see. The future will hold a couple of things for us, so let's see where this will be heading with us.
The future will hold many things. That's for sure. There's so many cool stuff, so many cool things going on.
Yeah, especially in 3 weeks when I do set for the very first time in my life, first step into the US. Let's see how this goes, huh? Well,
do we want to talk about hardware, or do you have more ESP miner topics?
I think we can talk a little bit about hardware. I think you want to go into the topic of the Bonanza, huh?
Yeah. Mindmore, maybe he's not here anymore. Anyways, Mindmore had posted a question earlier about Canon chips, but we can talk about the Bonanza. I just built up the Bitaxe Bonanza 1002X. So this is a pretty big milestone, and last week, like it's working. Not mining to it yet, but all the bring up stuff passed. So this is a 4-chip Intel BZM2 miner. It has an ESP32, but it also has an RP2040 bridge chip on there to adapt the serial, and got the firmware working for the bridge chip, and I got last night I got it working. I don't know if it's quite there yet, but a Bitaxe raw firmware for the ESP32, so that we can do the sort of initial mining tests with these chips. But yeah, this is a pretty slick design. It's all up on GitHub if you want to check it out. I know some people were asking me how it was coming along. I had a hell of a time ordering parts for this thing. Man, that sucked. But I finally got them all in, filled them up. To brag a little bit, I actually soldered 2 of these, so 8 ASICs together. And I got all 8 ASICs soldered perfectly the first time. I'm so stoked. That's the first time I think that's ever happened for me.
Big one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's working. This is going to have an external like display board that hasn't been designed yet. I still need to do that. Yeah,
talking about displays, we definitely need to play a little bit more around with OLED and AMOLED displays.
Yes. Yeah, man, I've been looking a lot at different OLED modules. I really like the look of OLEDs. I personally am not, I love the Bitaxe Touch, don't get me wrong, but I like the simplicity of a monochrome display. So that's where I'm going to be headed for this first Bitaxe Bonanza display board. But the cool thing is that, you know, it's a separate module, so it would be relatively easy for people to change that out for different displays if they want. Muchachim and I have been talking about a bunch of different displays. There's a lot of cool ones out there. Of course, they're all like just pathetic documentation, but AI makes pretty short work of understanding the interface to the display. Yeah, I think it'll be pretty neat. I've always wanted to, graduate Bitaxe away from that tiny little display that's been on there. So I think that this is the opportunity for that. But yeah, I'm headed towards a single color OLED, but bigger with cooler graphics. We'll have a separate processor for the display so that we don't have to burden ESP Miner with all that. And so Bitaxe Bonanza, that's coming along. Mindmore was asking a couple of questions about Kanan. He says, are there any new developments regarding Kanan chips for OSMU projects? Read data sheets. I've been working on it. I've got a few contacts at Kanan that we've been talking with. They have not coughed up real data sheets yet, but they seem at least interested. So working with them to sort that out. They're interested. There's a couple other groups that are interested. I know I feel like a broken record. I've been saying this for like years at this point, but there are other chip makers that are interested in it, and we're working with them. It's kind of it's a slow, sort of strange process, right? Because they want me to say, yes, I will order 1 million chips from you, and then they send me the data sheet. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. It needs to go the other way. I need to see the data sheet and see, how this chip works, and if it's going to, be useful for a Bitaxe, which the data sheet would help to understand. And then I can tell you how many the various manufacturers might want to buy. So it's like there seems to be some of these things that are still lost in translation, but it's progressing forward. Develop Progress says, "Is Bonanza chips a one-time thing? They're no longer being manufactured." Yeah, that's correct. The Intel chips in the Bonanza are no longer being manufactured, but there are millions of them out there, and they're incredibly low cost. So I think it's worth pursuing. Oh yeah, Christoph says the same thing. There's a lot of them in circulation. Yes, there's a lot of them out there. They're like JPro level efficiency and hash rate chips. So I think at this price point, they're very worth pursuing. Do you see this Bonanza ASIC being available to consumers at some point? Yes, both the chip and finished units will be available to people hopefully very soon. Crypto Knight says, is anyone working on an open source ASIC? We had some discussions talking about trying to do an FPGA design for an ASIC. I know K1 is he's a genius in this area, and so he was talking about it. I think an FPGA miner design would be a cool way to get into ASIC design. We're gonna have to take a couple steps back to take some steps forward, because any ASIC that we can make ourselves is going to suck, right? It's going to be really bad. There's no way we're making 3 nanometer ASICs. But maybe we can make a 100 nanometer ASIC and just kind of get that experience of seeing how they're built and trying it. That's the stepping stone towards making a real ASIC someday that could be open source. Yeah, he says on a larger platform like NASA's 1970 processors. Yes, exactly. It won't quite be that bad, but we could do. I think it's on the order of like 100 nanometers or something like that. This would be like a mega hash, level.
Feels a little bit like Butterfly Labs, huh?
Yeah, think like hundreds of joules per terahash, that kind of thing.
Probably.
And with that, I actually got to run. I apologize, but I have got an appointment I've got to bounce out of here for.
Yeah, no, that's okay, because we are already sitting over now, so I think it's time to finish this session up and come to an end here.
All right. Well, Juan Clue, you're going to have to do the final shout-outs because I am actually late, so I got to go right now. But appreciate you all for being here. Maybe you can do the shout-outs to everyone. Appreciate you all for joining us, and I'll catch you later.
All right. Sounds good. Have fun. Good. I think with that, if you don't have any further questions in the chat or anything else, I think we're going to just close out this session here. Let's see if there's anything else that we have been missing in the chat. Quickly checking here. I don't really see anything that we haven't really touched on. I mean, one thing maybe was about the talk of having external apps on something like Umbrella or StartOS. Yeah. I mean, there are already a couple of apps out there, but as far as I do know, not many people are actually using that. So it's going to be a tough thing of onboarding people into external tools. Therefore, it might be a little bit easier to just implement that into the miner itself. But even then, like, there are lots of discussions that need to be had about this in order to make sure that it aligns with everything. So, yeah, that was just a quick recap on that topic. Other than that, I don't really think we do have any more questions. I do appreciate everybody who was here today in the audience. Hope it was not too boring. Couple of news about everything else that's going to be coming in the next release. We're working heavily on that, so I hope you guys stay tuned and stay curious about what's going to happen there. And also, we try to make sure that as much as possible is out there as quick as possible. Free Bitaxe for all that attended? ? Funny thing. Would be funny. I mean, I think I still do have 1 or 2 Bitaxe of the original OSMU support edition laying around, but I usually do carry them with me onto events that I'm attending to, and whenever I do have had a really good talk with someone, I'm trying to give them that Bitaxe. So I still have 2 left. I had like 20 of them. So let's see, I'll take one with me to Vegas and another one with me to Prague this year. So let's see. Maybe some of you guys are attending to any of these conferences. Would be cool to meet you in person. Other than that, I'd say, yeah, see you and have a nice evening. With that, I'm going to head out. Thank you guys for being here and see you again in 2 weeks.